So you're staring down at a mold inspection report. And yeah, it probably looks like a terrifying medical chart filled with microscopic data and scientific jargon that's just anxiety inducing. You're probably wondering, but all these numbers mean for your health, your home, and your wallet. Well, welcome to the explainer. Let's just take a deep breath. Together, we're going to translate all of that confusing data into a very clear step-by-step roadmap. We'll take you all the way from the initial panic of a positive test straight through to the absolute peace of mind of total prevention. Okay, let's dive into this. We've got a structured roadmap today. Interpreting your inspection results, immediate steps after detection, the professional remediation process, passing the clearance test, and finally, your ultimate molds prevention plan.
All right, step 1, interpreting your inspection results.
To make sense of this data, we first have to crack that scary technical jargon. When you look at your report, you're going to see raw data measured in spores per cubic meter. And honestly, to a homeowner, seeing thousands of spores listed on a page looks absolutely terrifying. But hold on, don't panic just yet. The simple presence of mold spores indoors is entirely normal because they literally exist everywhere in nature. When it comes to these numbers, context is absolutely everything.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that raw numbers don't actually tell the whole story. Broadly speaking, sure, anything below 500 is low, while hitting 5,000 or more is a huge red flag strongly suggesting you need immediate remediation. But here's the catch. A reading of, say, 2,000 spores per cubic meter indoors might be completely acceptable, or it might signal a massive problem. How is that even possible? Well, it entirely depends on what's happening outside your front door. Think of your house like a giant filter. A healthy home with proper ventilation should naturally have lower spore concentrations indoors than outside. That is the golden rule of a passing inspection. Your indoor counts must be lower than your outdoor baseline counts. So if the outdoor count is 4,000, an indoor count of 2,000 is perfectly fine. But if the outdoor count is only 300, that exact same 2,000 indoor reading means mold is actively setting up camp inside. Plus, the type of spore is a huge deal. If you find specific water indicator molds like Stachybotrys, which you probably know as black mold, indoors, that's an instant red flag. It's almost never found outdoors, so seeing it inside means you absolutely have an active moisture issue.
Moving on to step 2, immediate steps after detection. Okay, so what if your indoor counts actually are elevated? Well, the clock starts ticking immediately because mold spreads like wildfire when it's disturbed. You have a crucial 24 to 48-hour window to take action. First, contain the affected area. Shut the door, turn off your HVAC system so forced air doesn't just blast spores all over the house. Second, fix the moisture source. Third, contact a state licensed specialist. And fourth, notify your insurance company right away and take tons of photos. But listen, major warning here. Resist the urge to start scrubbing the mold yourself. If it's anything over 10 square feet, DIY cleaning without proper negative air containment is just going to spread spores to clean rooms, creating a very expensive cross-contamination nightmare. Which brings us to the absolute golden rule of this entire process. Fix the moisture source first. Seriously, remediation is completely useless if that underlying roof leak or HVAC condensation issue isn't fixed. Any pro worth their salt will insist on this. Wiping mold off a surface that's still wet is basically just a temporary haircut for the mold. It provides a fresh, wet breeding ground and guarantees it will be back within weeks.
Let's talk about insurance realities for a second, since that was step 4 on our triage list. This is something you really want to know up front. Standard homeowners policies usually cap mold coverage somewhere between $1,000 and $10,000. But the kicker is how insurers view the cause. They heavily favor sudden accidental events, like a burst pipe. If your mold is from long-term neglect, slow drip, or HVAC condensation buildup, it's rarely covered. Why? Because they consider that a preventable maintenance failure. Knowing this little detail helps you frame your claim correctly right from the start.
All right, step 3, the professional remediation process.
Once you're contained and the leak is fixed, we move to the actual remediation. And you can rest easy here. This is a highly structured scientific protocol, way more involved than just spraying bleach and wiping down a wall. The pros start by establishing a negative air pressure containment zone using heavy-duty plastic sheeting. They run industrial air scrubbers with HEPA filters so loose spores can't migrate. Contaminated porous materials, like drywall and insulation, you can't clean those. They get bagged, sealed, and completely ripped out. Then, solid non-porous surfaces are treated with EPA-registered antimicrobials, followed by aggressive structural drying. Timeline-wise, you're looking at 1 to 3 days for small isolated jobs and maybe 1 to 2 weeks if there's major structural damage.
Now for step 4, passing the clearance test.
So, the walls look clean to the naked eye. Job done, right? Absolutely not. Remember, mold spores are microscopic. This brings us to the PRV, or post-remediation verification, basically the clearance test. This is the absolute non-negotiable proof of success. It proves that your indoor spore counts are actually back down to normal outdoor baselines. Lenders and future buyers are going to demand this paperwork. You have to get this done before any new drywall goes back up. Otherwise, you seriously risk sealing active microscopic mold right back inside your newly painted walls. And please pay close attention to this. The clearance test must be performed by an independent third-party company. Having the exact same contractor inspect their own cleanup work is a massive conflict of interest. In places like Florida, it's actually against state regulations for the same company to remediate and inspect a project, unless the visible mold was tiny, under 10 square feet, or a year has passed. Always use two different companies.
And finally, step 5, the ultimate mold prevention plan.
So, the crucial point is, a clean inspection is really just a snapshot in time. It means your house is fine today. But true long-term safety, that lives in prevention. Think about these numbers for a second. $1,500 to $9,000. That is the average cost of professional mold remediation in the U.S. And in severe cases with structural damage, it can easily top $30 grand. The small investments required to prevent mold from setting up shop in the first place are a mere fraction of that. Prevention is, for sure, the far cheaper option.
And your magic number for prevention is 50%. Keeping your indoor relative humidity below 50% is literally the single most powerful defense you have against mold. Ideally, the EPA recommends keeping it right between 30% and 50%. This is incredibly vital if you live in a humid, subtropical climate like Florida, where outdoor humidity regularly sits above 70%. You've got to monitor your indoor humidity with a digital hygrometer so you aren't just flying blind.
Here are the practical, everyday habits that will save your home. Run your AC and dehumidifiers consistently. If you spot a water leak, repair it within 24 to 48 hours. Because mold can latch on to wet materials in just a day or two if you let it sit. After a shower or cooking, make sure you run your exhaust fans for 15 to 20 minutes and ensure they actually vent outside, not just up into your attic. Check your roof and foundation once a year and swap out those HVAC filters every 1 to 3 months. Consistency is key here. I want to read this directly from our source material because it really hits the nail on the head. Mold responds to conditions, not calendars. The goal is to deny mold the one thing it absolutely requires to grow: sustained moisture. You see, you can never create a perfectly sterile, spore-free home. Spores are just part of nature, but you absolutely can control the moisture that feeds them. Cut off the moisture, and you completely control your mold risk.
Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. Your inspection gave you a clear roadmap out of the current crisis. It told you what was there, and the pros helped clear it out. But looking forward, are your daily habits denying mold the moisture it needs to return? You've got the knowledge now to take total control of your indoor environment, starting today. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and here's to a healthy, moisture-controlled home.